I'm gonna start recording. All right, friends, let's share my screen and we will do this. All right, we are starting week 10, very exciting. I did call out somebody yesterday about missing a lot of these Fridays, but on accident. So if they are watching this, I just want to apologize one more time. I wasn't meant for a call out. It was more of a check-in. But we're gonna get into a little bit of a holding yourself accountable in this conversation today. So again, no pressure, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry one more time. Let's talk about our foundations. It's still the 5-minute habit. That's always a great place to come back to. We continue to get into our protein. I know everyone's doing a lot better with that from the conversations that I've had, so that's awesome. Eating slow is hit or miss. Everyone seems to be mindful of it though, at least aware of it, which I think is super awesome. Looking at carbs, eating to satisfy. So this is making sure that you're not eating until you're stuffed or you have to like unbutton your pants because you're so full. And then getting enough fats into your world. We're gonna shift gears a little bit and do a little bit more active planning versus just change your perspective of thinking about how you're eating and what type of foods you need to have. We're gonna talk about meal planning. If you've done the Whole30 before or something similar, we're gonna go back into that. You are gonna start to forecast your week, writing down what you're gonna have for breakfast, lunch, dinner, what your snacks are gonna be. And this is just a plan. This is gonna be a framework that you're gonna work with, understanding that things happen throughout the week that are unplanned, or you make a meal and it ends up being disgusting, so you have to order out, or work goes super long, so your meal plan to make like whatever you're gonna make was gonna take an hour, and now it's like 10 o'clock at night and you haven't eaten. So understanding that things change, but we're gonna come up with this framework and see how the week goes. So we'll kind of do some forecasting and then we'll look at and see how you did at the end of the week. So as we forecast your week, I would start, if you're watching this on Friday, start today and go from the rest of the day or Saturday through next Friday. Whenever you're watching, let's go 7 days. Look at what plans you may have. So I put social plans on here. This usually is a big factor. So work dinners, work drinks, plans with friends, birthday parties, brunches. I know that that is limited right now, but we are still doing social activities, whether it's over Zoom or picnics in the park. So write down what social stuff you have planned, factor that in. Think about your work week. Some people are traveling for work right now, so I know that that makes it a little bit more stressful. If you have longer nights because you're working on a project, factor that in. And then the most important thing that I think we forget about is we come up with this beautiful meal plan, but we don't factor in when we're actually going to do the grocery shopping. So it's 2 days into this meal plan for the week and we haven't gone grocery shopping and we don't have any of the food. So when you're writing down your plan, think about all the ingredients that you need for all the different meals and then make sure you get them on your grocery shopping trip, or know that you have like someplace nearby, whether it's Fresh Market or that corner grocery store, to get that last minute thing of cilantro or whatever it is you need. So forecasting comes first. And then as we continue to plan, we're going to operationalize. We talked a little bit about the prepping or the shopping, but then when are you going to do some prepping? Can you cook anything or prepare anything ahead of time? If you have a partner, can your partner help with a meal or with part of the meal or with the cleaning up after all the stuff that you do? And then when are you going to do all these different things? It's nice to do it on the weekend. But if your schedule is different and you have a more flexible Monday or Tuesday, kind of decide when that's going to happen. And then what are the trade-offs? So if you have been enjoying ordering Grubhub or caviar or pizza, are you willing to trade that off to make a home-cooked meal? And that might be no. And then I would make sure you schedule in when you're going to have the tacos or pizza that you order in. And then continuing to look at your team. I know we have some parents in this group here. are your kids old enough to help with any of the meal prepping? So can they put chopped vegetables in a Tupperware, or can they help create the meal with something that they'll enjoy to eat? So get creative here. I know we've all done a lot of creative work over the last couple of months. So we're going to continue kind of stretching our ability to think outside of the box. And then finally, talking about executing our plan, so this meal plan for the week. So I want you to write it down either on a piece of paper or on like Google Notes. I would keep track of what went well and what was a challenge during the week. And then next week, we'll talk about this for a moment. What were the variances in the plan versus reality? Were you 80% on your plan? Were you 20%? Kind of see what was the reality, and then what can we do the following week to be 1% better. This may not be a lifetime thing for you of planning out your week, but I think it's good practice to get into this again if you've never done this before, and see if it works for you and see what adds value and what maybe you could do without. So that's the big plan for the week. Start to meal plan. And I'll open this up for a couple of comments at the end here if there are any. And then we're going to shift gears for a second and talk a little bit about veggies. So as we're meal planning, I had a little conversation with Alex last night talking about our meals, and I had to remind him that I prefer my meals, specifically dinner, because that's usually where we cook together, is I like to start with the protein, and then I add a vegetable in, and then I kind of go from there depending on what the protein and the vegetable is. But I also like to have complex flavors and textures. So the initial plan for dinner last night was just plain ground beef and plain white rice. And we had a conversation that I wanted to have a little bit more variety in that. Part of it goes into this topic here. So, but I still hate vegetables. I think I should have them in my world, but I still hate them. And we'll talk about this in a second, but totally makes sense. So our veggie phobia, if you have that or have overcome that, it's actually coded into our DNA. So talking about our kind of like main 4 flavors, and then they've kind of discovered more over the years, but salt, sweet, sorry, I have salt on here 3 times. I forget what that's supposed to be. Sarah, do you know? Well, there's 4 flavors. I have it on my notes. I just blanking at it right now. The bitter one, that's where when we were, you know, back in the day, before we had grocery stores.
Oh, is it sour?
Sour, thank you. Yeah. I knew it was an acid. I was just blanking on it.
Yeah.
But the bitter helps protect us. So if we tasted something bitter, there was a good chance it was poisonous. We're thinking like cave people days. And so we would avoid it. Also, if you remember when we talked about when we were talking about fats, vegetables were kind of a low calorie, low, like kind of like a really risky food source back in the day, you know, when we were living in caves. So not a ton of calories, wasn't super satisfying, chance that bitter taste that it was poisonous. So we've kind of like adapted to this world of like, this is not good for us, so we don't like it, so then we don't like vegetables. It's also one of those things that we can actually pass on to our kids, or we got from our mothers. So if there was a ton of vegetable eating kind of while you were in the womb, tendency to enjoy more vegetables is a little bit easier. They did, one of the first studies with this was they had moms eat a bunch of like garlic, and then they had testers smell the amniotic fluid, which is just really bizarre to think about it, but that kind of gets passed on. So if you've always loved vegetables, chances are how you were grown in the womb and raised made it easier for you to enjoy them. Again, talking about this bitterness, I'm using kale as an example. If you hate kale, totally makes sense. In our DNA, it's what we were kind of brought up with, again, as cave people. It's a protective thing. You can kind of see this bitterness flavor profile here. But there are ways to overcome this if it's important for you to start adding more vegetables into your world. So adding vegetables kind of does a lot of magic in terms of the weight loss perspective, but it helps keep us look, you know, young and sexy, and helps us, you know, to keep our body free from some cancers because we're getting all these like vegetables with vitamins and minerals and fiber and all this other good stuff. So having vegetables is really important. One thing you can do is challenge yourself regularly. You're gonna pump yourself up and you're gonna try that vegetable that you haven't tried in a while or have never tried, see how it goes. Your taste buds are gonna change. It might be that it's neutral or enjoyable, but you might have to pump yourself up to do it. So you might have to like listen to some music or, you know, plug your nose and take a bite and chew real fast and, you know, chug some water or a beer. But challenge yourself regularly. Just because you didn't like something when you were 12 or 20 or 30 doesn't mean that you might not enjoy it now. And then talking about creating dishes where there's a bunch of flavor profiles going on that kind of make that magic. And then cushioning the vegetables with sweet and fatty flavors can kind of like confuse your taste buds into something enjoyable. I would say most people hate plain Brussels sprouts, or the Brussels sprouts that my mom used to make, which she would like take frozen Brussels sprouts and microwave them in a dish, and they were so gross. But roasted Brussels sprouts with, you know, some bacon and like maybe some honey or maple syrup, maybe, you know, some cheese, are delicious. So we can kind of trick your taste buds to enjoying the vegetables. And as long as you're not going overboard with those other flavors, so like the honey or the oils, bacon, etc., you're not going to dramatically change the calorie content. So I would say go for it if you're trying to experiment. And then lastly, because it is Friday, so we've talked about meal planning, getting some more vegetables in. I shared this last week, so I just wanted to give a quick overview of the article that I shared on week 9, is weekend overeating. I know this happens for a lot of us in the past. I don't know how it's working during the days of COVID, but there's a tendency to eat super clean Monday through Thursday. And then as soon as Friday hits, it's that donut with the coffee first thing, and then ordering out, having some drinks, and then the whole weekend kind of goes bananas. So that you're consuming, you know, a week's worth of calories in like a 2-day period. And we kind of yo-yo back and forth of being quote unquote perfect and then going insane on the weekends by like eating out 4 times or ordering in 4 times, and then having dessert and drinks and donuts. So just real high level overview of the weekend overeating. The article that I shared last week goes into more detail. So good enough instead of perfect, I think, is a great place to be. I would let go of food rules. So I don't eat this because it's bad for me. Food isn't good or bad. So I would start to let that go if you can. I'm not a huge fan of cheat days. If you've been doing that and that works for you, continue to do it. But if there's a Wednesday afternoon and you're really craving a burger, I would enjoy the burger and then don't save it for the weekend when then all of a sudden you want the burger plus the fries plus the chocolate cake and then pizza later because you were so restrictive during the week. Own your choices and then stop rationalizing. So if I had a really hard week, so I deserve this, or I got into a fight, so I'm gonna eat this. So spend some time with your thoughts and emotions, which is really hard right now, but it's also great practice. And then you can make decisions, but don't do the trade-offs with food if you're finding that you're plateauing. So again, we're in the time of COVID. Do the best to take care of yourselves. But if you find that you are overeating on the weekends, here are some suggestions that might help get out of that little pattern. And that's it. I'm gonna stop recording because it's just Sarah and I. and we're going to chat. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. Otherwise, I'll talk to you next week.